This is in Likuti Torah. It's in Likuti Torah, a book written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. My Mormon, the first Rebbe of Chabad, essentially on Vayikra and Bamidbar and Dvorim, and also Shir Hashirim. Okay, here's a mimer from in the book Likuti Torah by the first Rebbe of Chabad. The Gemara and the Gemara. Okay, so this week's Torah portion is Tazria Matzorah. It talks about this unusual Torah disease, if you want to call it, called Tzorat. And Tzorat is an external sign. External signs appear on flesh of someone, and there's many details about it. And there's Tzorat that appears on garments and also on people's houses. And even when it pulls on a person's the Tzorat, that doesn't necessarily make him weak. He doesn't feel sick. It's a sign that something is wrong with him spiritually. It says it comes because a person speaks improperly. He says what's called lashon hora, damaging speech. In any case, it's a sign on the person's, the external of the person's body that he's not spiritually okay and he has to fix himself up. And you call an expert that looks at it, and then he says, this is Tzorat, and the person is still not officially called a Matzorah. You have to bring a Kohen, and the Kohen says that he's got Tzorat, and then the person has to go outside of the camp. And he has to, the garments are torn, he lets his hair grow, and he can't let anybody near him. He yells, oh, Tame, Tame, until finally it ends up that the signs go away. And okay. So there's an argument that now there's different colors. There's the discoloration of the skin. So that there has to be the discoloration of the skin, and then the person is locked up. And then if there's hair that grows, if there's hairs that grow there, then the person is impure. But if the hair comes first, then the person is pure. That's okay. If the hair is first and then afterwards comes, that's okay. But what if there's a doubt? You don't know which one came first. So it says in the Gemara, and Baba Metzia, in the book of Gemara, Baba Metzia, it's like on page 46 or 66, explains like this: Perikapoli, there's an argument, but Matifta de Rakia. It says that there's an argument in heaven. There's an argument in heaven in Beheret Kodemet L'Sar Lavan. If this discoloration comes before the hair, and the hair grows after this discoloration of the skin, then the person is impure. If the hair comes first, then the person is declared to be pure. If there is a doubt, then there's an argument. Suffix, if there's a doubt, so it says there's an argument in the heavenly court, Beit Din Metivta de Rekia, the heavenly court, the heavenly yeshiva. So there's an argument between God and the Metivta de Rekia. That's what it says in the Gemara. Suffix, or Kodesh Baruch Hu Omar, God says it's Torah, and all this Metivta de Rekia, this holy, whatever it is, yeshiva. All those scholars up in heaven, they say it's tummy, it's impure. You have a doubt. Said maybe the hair came afterwards. If so, it's tummy. And God said, listen, maybe the hair came first. If so, it's pure. An argument between God and the heavenly court. Only so they said, Man Nochach, who's going to decide? Nochach Rabba Bar Nachmani. Says Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he'll decide. Rabbi Bar Nachmani, at that time, he was alive. It's a long story with Rabbi Bar Nachmani that he made the government angry. This is in the time of the Romans. So he made the government angry, and they were looking around for him to kill him. And he was running away. He ran away, and he escaped several times. And finally, he escaped to some faraway place. And they caught him, and then the Rabbis got him out, that they freed him. It's a whole story. It's told over there. It's in the Gemara in Baba Matzia. So it says, who's going to decide? Rabba Bar Nachmani is going to decide. The Omer Rabba Bar Nachmani, Ani Yachid Ben Negoin. He said, I am unique. I know the laws of plagues better than anybody else. I'm unique ba'oelos. There's another type of impurity. If a dead body is in a tent, a Jewish body is in a tent, it makes it impure. And there's all sorts of details there. If there's an opening in the tent, if there's an opening on the side, if there's opening, how big the opening is, if there's a lot of openings, does it go through the openings, etc. So it says that came down an angel, whatever, and they caught it, and he died. And the last thing that he said was Tohor. I agree with God. I agree with God. And so it says in the Gemara, okay, a strange, weird story. And he died, he went up to heaven, and they found his body. It's a whole story that they found his body. There were birds over they're hovering over, they looked around. Pirashatam, the reason that it says, the Omer Kroda, the Torah says to either make it pure or to make it impure, because the Torah says it starts off with the laws of Tahora first. What is Tahor? Okay, anyway, that's what he said. So he agrees with God. So let's go again. There's an argument in heaven about a certain issue. It happens to be that issue was regarding impurity of the Matzorah. That's why this whole mimer appears here. But the amazing thing is there's an argument in heaven between God and the heavenly tribunal. And God says that this thing is permissible, and the heavenly tribunal says it's not. So they say, who's going to decide? What do you mean who's going to decide? Let God, it goes according to God. I mean, God creates the whole business. No, it says, no, since God gave the Torah, as the Torah is in the hands of us. But these are not exactly us. These are souls of departed rabbis that are now in heaven. So they're sort of in the middle. So they said, well, let's get somebody who's in this physical world. We're going to get Rabbi Bar Nachmani. He's in the world, he'll decide. So he decides what the law is, and he agrees with God. You have to understand this. What's going on over here? Rabbi Bar Nachmani is a human being. He was what's called an Amora, a Tana. He was right in between. The Tanaim, they were the ones who wrote the Mishnah. We're going to see they had the power to raise the dead. We'll see in a second. And the Amoraim, they were a little bit later. They had, generally speaking, less power, but not always. That was for Yeshua ben Levi. They said he was at the same level as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he's very holy people. Let's look at this. She'ana Roim, we see that they did miracles. Shoya Yocholim Lasod, for instance, Pinchas ben Yair. Pinchas ben Yair, in the first chapter of the Talmud in Cholin, that he said, Ganai Nara Chalok Li. Mehemav, he said he came to a river. People were pursuing him. He came to a river, and he said, "River." No, he had to go somewhere. I'm sorry, he had to go. They weren't pursuing him. He had to go somewhere special. He came up to a river, and he said, "River, split for me." And the river said, "I'm not going to split. I'm doing what God told me." And he said, "I'm going to do a mitzvah. That's also what God told me. And mitzvahs are higher than you. I'm commanding you to split." And this river split. Umiyad nitkaya mashaba osef yachad Moshe Rabbeinu v'shishim ribu Yisrael b'nei gabi kriyas yam suv hayazepela. He said, but Pinchas ben Yair said to a river, split. The river split, just like that. The only time we see that previously was Moses and 600,000, 3 million Jews. It took the merit of Moses and 3 million Jews to go across for the sea to split. And here we have one Tana that he split the sea. So the Cain Omer also says in the Talmud, it says Zuta the Bechem Mechaya Metiv. It says that the smallest of the rabbis of the Tanaim, these were the pupils of Rabbeinu HaKodesh, said they had the power to raise the dead. It's a whole story that he read. Anyway, they raised the dead body. That wasn't even a Jew. It wasn't even a Jew. It was a Roman soldier that they were afraid they were going to accuse them of killing. And anyway, they had the power to raise the dead. Oh. The Kain Omer Zutus of the. But we have to explain first of all. Okay, so how is it that the rabbis in this world they had such power? Here we see Rabba Bar Nachmani, Rabba Bar Nachmani. His name was Rabba Bar Nachmani. That he had the power to decide laws. He said, God, there's a disagreement in heaven between heaven and the heavenly court and God. And they said, let's get a rabbi in this world. He'll decide the law. He'll decide. How does he have power that he's going to decide the law? Also, it says the same thing, that these rabbis, they had the power to raise the dead. They had the power to split the sea. I mean, there's whole religions that are based on miracles that are less than that. They said they had the power. One guy raises the dead. We've got billions of people believing in him. Who knows if he did it? Here it says that clearly, the Talmud says that they split the sea. Everybody saw. So if so, how did he have the power? How did they have the power to do this? So he says, in order to understand this, now we're going to make a jump over there. We have to understand, first of all, why God is called Kodesh Baruch Hu. Why God has this name, the Holy One, blessed be He. We also have to understand what is this thing of the Tivta the Rikia, the heavenly court. Okay, so God is called the Holy One, blessed be He. God is called holy. Holy, this comes from this level of keter, crown. That's what's called keter, crown. Okay, so the Rebbe is going to explain here, and I want to explain because I want to jump to the end. The Rebbe is going to explain that there's two levels of godliness. Keter is called Kodesh. God is the Holy One. That's the Holy One. That's this level of surrounding the world, an aspect of godliness which is above the world. And Baruch, that's the Holy One, and blessed be He. This is the level of God's wisdom, how it comes into the world. So it comes out that there's two levels of godliness. Holiness, that's what's called Sovev Kalmin. God is called the Holy One. Why? Because He's totally above the creation. Totally above the creation. Like we've said a lot of times, God in any normal sense of the word does not exist. There's no type of existence that we can compare God to. God creates all existence. He creates consciousness. He creates awareness. He creates spiritual. God is not spiritual. He creates the spiritual. We have absolutely no way of comprehending what God is, but nevertheless, He creates everything. That's called Sovev Kalmin, that God surrounds all the worlds. What does it mean? He surrounds all definition. He defies all definition. Sovev Kalmin. He's above all being. He permeates all being. He creates all being. That's what's called holy. And Baruch, this is another aspect of God, which is called Mamali Kalmin, how God fills the world. Everything is different. Every molecule is different. Every place is different. Every second is different. Every person is different. A person is different from a tree, and a tree is different from a cat, and a cat is different from, everything is different. That's Mamali Kalmin. So there's two aspects of God, the holy aspect of God, and so to speak, the natural aspect of God. That's how God fills the world. Okay, now we're going to jump. Now we know, with this, we're going to answer what the argument between God and the heavenly court. We're going to see God is this aspect of how surrounding the worlds, and the heavenly court is going to be this aspect of how God fills the worlds. How does Rabbi Nachmani come in here? And all these other Tanaim that they can do these miracles? We're going to see they're closer to the source, to God, than the heavenly court is. The heavenly court is like in the middle. The heavenly court. And what's on the bottom is attached to what's on the top. So, okay, let's go and see. We're going to see in a second. I want to jump to the end. It's a beautiful long mimer, but we haven't got an infinite amount of time, as you probably noticed. Not only today, but in general, a person only lives a certain amount of time, so we have to make the most of it. Here we go. Oh. Okay, let's see if we can do it. Here we go. Now we have to understand this whole idea of the Matifta the Rikia. I sort of gave you a hint of what it is. Even though now this is the heavenly court. The heavenly court. These are the souls of great rabbis that are in heaven. They're in heaven and they're sitting up in heaven and they learn Torah and they know all the secrets and they're spiritual and then in some ways they're lower than the angels in some respects. In some ways they're higher than the angels because they're learning Torah. Let's see. These rabbis that are sitting up there in heaven that God had an argument with, even though that they got this revelation of godliness because they're sitting up in heaven. And they heard God say Torah. They say that the law is that if there's a doubt whether the hairs come first before the blemish or the blemish comes, is a doubt, right? Remember again, if the blemish comes first and then the hairs come, then it's impure. If the hairs come first, then it's pure. But if there's a doubt, so they don't know what to do. So God says Torah. And even though they heard God say that it's pure, that if there's a doubt, it's okay. Im kolzen, nevertheless, hatam lo yadu ad sheomer ma nochach. Nevertheless, they didn't know what the reason is. They said, God said, it's not enough for us. It's not enough for us. We have a doubt. If there's a doubt, let's not take any chances. It's forbidden. The person is impure. And then they said, okay, we have to find somebody in the world. Why do they find Rabbi Bar Nachmani? Why? Who's going to decide? Let's explain that the Tanaim and the Amoraim, all they did was sit and learn Torah. Why did they do this? In order to draw down from the essence of God. Keter Ilah, the upper crown. From above to below, that's what we call Sovev Kodesh, this aspect of God of Kodesh, holiness. And that's the whole idea why God put this Torah, which is the Torah comes from the essence of God, to draw it into this physical world, which the world is mamali kolmim, into nature. In this aspect of God, which surrounds all the worlds, this aspect of God, which is called holy, the Holy One, blessed be He, this aspect of God, which is called holy, it's impossible that it can shine into a vessel, be galut in a revealed way. Pasaga in a way that's understandable. It's above understanding. Even in the Gan Eden, even in the upper heavens. Until Techiyat HaMeitim. When the dead rise, then the essence of God will be revealed in the heavens everywhere. But in the heavens, in this heavenly court, there shines godliness, but it's only a ray of godliness. Ki machmas sha'or panimi, because this light is what's called a understandable light inside, or makif hem tevekim yachad ze im ze lochena aram min makif zoreach bepenimi. Because up in heaven, so it's a heavenly thing, so they're closer to God. So therefore, there's a little bit of a ray of pure godliness that shines. That's what heaven is. Heaven, a little ray of godliness shines into heaven. In this world, in this physical world, we have no idea what spiritual is. We don't even know how much more so we don't know what God is. But we don't even know what spiritual is. Right? Spiritual. A person dies. What happens when a person dies? His soul becomes spiritualized. It's still there. The soul's still there, but everybody's going berserk because the spiritual is infinitely far from the physical. But what about God himself? He creates the spiritual. So that's not far away from the physical. It's just totally incomprehensible to the physical. It's not, it can't be comprehended itself. It's like trying to explain mathematics to a rock, right? No matter how good your explainer you are, how good of a teacher, how far you bring it down, a rock is not going to be able to understand kindly. Well, the fact is we are farther from comprehending God than a rock is from understanding mathematics. Mathematics and a rock are part of the world, right? God is creating the world. We can't understand it. That's this aspect of Soviv Kalmi. Well, after a person dies, goes to heaven, so you get a little bit of a ray of this godliness that we can't comprehend in the world because we're too physical. So up in heaven, so they get a little ray of this godliness. That's this heavenly court. They get a little ray of this godliness. And let's skip a little bit over here. I don't want to skip it because it's not good. It is very good, but this is a chance to make a little bit of time over here. I think maybe we're going to lose it looking for the end of here it is. The Yadu and it's known. Ki hayom la sotom ulamchar la kabel schar. Now, in this world, I mean, God wants this world. He put us in this world. Why did he put us in this world? He put us in this world. Judaism says he put us in this world because God likes this world. He wants this world to be perfect. And when this world is perfect, it's much higher. This is according to God's essence, this world. That's why God put Torah here. That's why the raising of the dead is going to be here. But meanwhile, we have to just do. That's what God wants us to be. We have to do. It says we have to, Hayom La'asotam, today we have to do the commandments and learn the Torah, even though we don't really perceive what God is. Like I said, we don't really know what heaven is. And tomorrow we receive the reward. Therefore, Gan Eden, therefore up there in heaven, in this heavenly court, Kishalom du Torah, when they're learning Torah up there, this is like receiving reward. Even though or that the light of godliness which is revealed in heaven, who is the level of Mamalik Halmim, this is the level of God which fills the world. Heaven is, so to speak, part of nature. It's just a creation. Nevertheless, but because they are, so to speak, closer to godliness, they're not so physical in heaven. So therefore, a little bit of this surrounding light, this level of holiness, shines in Zoreach or Makif in a surrounding way. Therefore, Ra'u or Zoreach Misoviv Kalmi. Therefore, in the heavens, you can see a little bit of this light. There's more. It says the angels, for instance, they're screaming out, God, Kaddish, Kaddish, they're berserk over God. Here in the world, everybody's berserk over money, over power, what they're berserk. Over in the heavens, they realize that money is nothing, is absolutely nothing. A person dies, he loses all his money. Up in heaven, there's no death. It's eternal. Wait, so they're all screaming out for God. Here we have no idea what God is. So it says up in the heavens, also the angels and also in this heavenly court, so they get a little bit of a shine of godliness. Namely, what they heard, Kodesh Baruch Hu, that God, the Holy One, that's Soviv Cholamim. How God surrounds the world. Baruch Hu means how it comes into their comprehension a little bit. He said it's pure. That's what God said. If there's a doubt between what the law, then it's pure. If the hair came first, if the blemish came. Kodesh, like we said before, holy is this level of keter that's surrounding all the worlds. Which Alpihara is a keter, according to this shine of God's crown, it's called, and God's wisdom that shines into Gan Eden, that shines into what's called the Garden of Eden. That's where the angels are. And this heavenly court is, as dinu, the law is shesafek, that if it's a doubt, it's Torah. If there's a doubt whether the hair came first or what, so God, he's pure. So God looked at it and says, if it's a doubt, I can say that the person is pure. Don't worry about it. Okay, and therefore, lo yisigu rat giluya ratzon. They only receive this outside will of God, shekach Torah, that is pure. But ha'or v'ha'penimius v'hatam, but the inside and the reason of this will, why is this doubt? If it's a doubt, if the hair came first, that it's Torah, they couldn't get in the heavens, in the upper heavens, in the upperly court. I'm sorry, in the heavenly court. So the heavenly court, they heard God say it was Torah. They could hear. We don't hear anything. They heard it, but they couldn't understand it. It was just a surrounding light. They couldn't understand it, and the whole thing of learning Torah is understanding. Because this level of revelation that they got was only a surrounding, what's called soviv kolmi, that it's surrounded, it's holy, it's removed from them. It doesn't shine into them, into these souls of the rabbis in heaven. It just shines in there in a concealed way and not in a revealed way. It says, therefore they said, if there's a doubt, we don't know what to say. They understood that the law, that God said that it's pure, but they couldn't understand the reason. Okay, one second. Oh, it says, Adarabah, exactly the opposite. According to their understanding of the rabbis, the Matifta, the Rakia, that they were a lower level of godliness. This was called the godliness, which is like relevant to nature. Like we said, the Rakia is this level of Bina, like that they were in the level of understanding. According to their understanding, they said, listen, we can't take any chances. If the the blemish comes first and then the hair, well, we admit it's impure. If the hair comes first, then we say, well, it's pure. But if there's a doubt, let's not take any chances. Let's say it's impure. God said that it was pure. Let's have some reasons. We can't, according to all of our logic, doesn't make any sense. So therefore, because they're up in the heavenly court and the Torah was given, we'll see, because they understood it was not and the whole thing of the heavenly court is to go according to their godly understanding. It was a godly understanding. It was not pure godliness. It wasn't this level of kodesh. So therefore, they said, Omru, Kulu Tame Kadin Sfeika. They said that the whole thing is impure, just like the law of a doubt. Why? Because there's a law. Sfeika Kadin, Sfeika Daraita Lachuma. Anytime there's a doubt in a Torah law, you have to be severe. Right? The classic case. According to the Torah, after you eat bread, you have to make a blessing. You have to make, there's a long blessing you make after you eat bread. It's a Torah commandment. After you eat an apple, you also have to make a blessing. But that's not from the Torah. That's a rabbinical. So it says, if you have a doubt, if you made a blessing after an apple, so it's only rabbinical. Suffik to Rabbanan Lakula. You don't have to make a blessing. If you have a doubt, if you made a blessing after eating bread, because it's a commandment from the Torah, then a doubt, you have to go to the severe side, be strict, and make the blessing. Same thing here. They said this law of impurity from Sorat, it's a doubt. If there's a doubt, and it's a Torah doubt, we have to be severe. But God said it was okay. God said it was okay. So he said, if there's a doubt in this case, what are we going to do? Omer, they said, Man Nochach, who's going to decide? Nochach, Rabba bar Nachmani. Rabba, the son of Nachmani. Why? Because it said, Rabba bar Nachmani, he said about himself, Ani Yechid ben Nigoyim. I am special. I understand the laws of impurity better than anybody else. Everybody came to ask him these laws. Therefore, Yadadin, he knew the law from the source. O Matzah Psak, and he found, according to logic, he found the reason why. V'dora shagam b'Torah katuv she'ein tameh. He learned from the Torah, according to logic, and that's what the souls of the heavenly court wanted, logic. So Rabbi bar Nachmani, he said, I found, according to the logic of the Torah, that God is right. Ein tameh. It's not impure. Unless you know for sure that the blemish came before the hair. But if there's a doubt, it's pure. So therefore, he said that's what the law is, and that's how they decided the law. We're going to see in the end that the Rambam doesn't go according to God. We're going to see 1 second. Masha Enkin, which is not the case according to the Saga, the Miftifta, the Rakia, which is not the case of the Heavenly Court. The Heavenly Court, they couldn't find in the Torah that the doubt would be pure. They just heard from God that they said that the law is pure. They heard it. It's like receiving a reward from God. They heard it, but they didn't understand. But according to their understanding in the Torah of the heavenly court, it seemed to them that it had to be impure. I know, namely, according to their understanding in heaven, came from the level of mamali kalmin. It came from this level of what we call boruch, mamali kalmin, so to speak, nature, spiritual nature, but not from the essence of God. Why did Rabbi bar Nachmani know, and they didn't know? We'll see. According to this, near Lam, it seemed to them that the law had to be that it was impure. That which is above understanding, they were in the Garden of Eden. What's above them is Eden itself. Eden. It says this level is going to be revealed of Eden, the essence of God, only in the raising of the dead. Now these souls, they're dead, they're, so to speak. They're not in bodies. They're up in heaven. So it says that what's up in this level of Eden, this it says no eye can see. It's impossible to understand. In the raising of the dead, it'll be revealed. So that God said that it was pure, the law was that it was pure, they couldn't understand it. And the whole idea of the heavenly court is to go according to the understanding. Either understanding is heavenly understanding, it's godly understanding, but it's not pure godliness. It's only this level of sovev kolmin. That's the level of blessed be he, not the kodesh, not the holy one. Blessed be. They got a ray of blessed be he. and the level of God is Holy One, that they couldn't understand, even though they knew what it was, but they couldn't get it. Therefore, it's too much, it's surrounding. Therefore, even though that they knew, that which shined a little bit of God's opinion, that it's pure, the Helim, it's concealed, they saw in heaven, they could see this little ray in heaven. Therefore, they understood what God wants. They understood that God wants Torah, but it was too surrounding for them. But the really reason they couldn't get, because this level of Makif, this level of God is the Holy One, blessed be the Holy One part of it, they couldn't get. They couldn't understand. It doesn't shine in rock, only in a way of concealment. So they didn't know why God said it was pure. And they had a million reasons in heaven, this was pure understanding, to say that it was impure. How did Rabba Bar Nachmani understand? Rabba Bar Nachmani, that he was Yachid Ben Nigoyim. What does it mean? That his level came from this level of this essence of God itself. Masha Makif Zoreach Be'or Panimi, that he was able to grasp this holiness, the Holy One, not just the blessed be he part. Therefore, he was called Yachid. This is above the level of all the other wise men that were in the world. All of the other wise men in the physical world, we're going to see this is going to be the same thing with Rabbi Meir. This is the concealment to him. That this level of pure godliness, it was concealed from all the other rabbis, just like it was concealed from the heavenly court. Of Rabba Bar Nachmani, he himself was this level of the Or Makif. He was able, somehow or other, he was connected to the essence of God. Because that's what God wants. Why did God put the Torah in this world? Because the essence of God is going to shine in this world. And essentially it's here in the Torah. Now it's only in the Torah. In the future, the Torah is going to enliven the whole world. Just like it did when God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai. It says that everybody died and their souls came back to life. In the Tanya, in the end of where there's the 37th chapter of the Tanya, it explains. 37th the chapter of Tanya, the 36th, just a second, 1 second. I always, this, let me have a minute, just one moment, please. At the end of the 30, okay, about the end of the 36th chapter of the Tanya, right? I'm sorry, 30, I'm in the wrong place. Give me a minute, here we go. That's right, I'm 36. The end of the 36th chapter of the Tanya, and it talks about when God gave the Torah, it says that everybody died and he enlivened the dead. That's the God's essence. The Torah comes from God's essence. Therefore, they could find Rabba Bar Nachmani, that he was connected with this essence. He was able to find this reason according to the law of the Torah. That also explains why that there were these Tanaim. He was like in the level of Tanaim, that they could raise the dead. We're going to learn that in the that's written in the Torah. Okay, etc., etc. 1 minute. Oh, Vahine, behold, the Tosfos beer an extra explanation of why the Kodesh Baruch Hu, why God, the Holy One, blessed be He said Tohor, he said it was pure. Maybe we can say this is according to what it says in the Zohar, that when God looked in the garden, et chaze al ginasa, al velois parash me'eden. It says in the Zohar, there's a big difference between the Garden of Eden and Eden itself. So it comes out that this revelation of Eden is the level of Chachma and Keter. This is the level of Chachma is like pure life. Keter is like pure will of God, above understanding. Chachma is above understanding. Chachma is also translated as faith, emunah, above understanding, which is not the case. Understand is Chachma Bina V'Dat, right? Bina is already understanding. Chachma is above understanding, which is not the case. Hasaga, the understanding of the heavenly court themselves in heaven, this is only drawn into Bina, into understanding of Atzilut. This is the level of the Rakia Elyon. This is what's called the upper firmament. But the revelation of God, when God comes, it says every day God comes to Mishtashea, to enjoy, to play with the tzaddikim in Gan Eden. This is a revelation from above the level of Bina. Like it says, Bati Lagani, etc., Achuti Kala. Okay, but this is the whole thing, which is explained in another place where it says that there was the voice, Me'alo Rakia. Right, it says right in the second day of creation that God divided the waters from above the heavens and the waters below the heavens. So it says this was a voice from above this rakia. This means a revelation of godliness which is above. That's the level we talked about. Soviv Kolmi, the Holy One, blessed be He. That's the Holy One part. The Holy One. That's what we said. The surrounding level of godliness. This level was above all possibility of understanding. It's above understanding. It's above Bina. It's above understanding. This level of godliness is called from Chachma, from Keter. This is above even the heavenly court. That their understanding comes from this firmament. But when there's a drawing down from this level of Aden, we said is the same thing as the Holy One, same thing as Soviv Kolmin. This is above this firmament. All this is drawn down by means of their learning the Torah in the heavenly court. It's drawn down from this level of Keter, a little ray of it, into this heavenly court, a bit Soviv Kolmim, etc., etc. But they only get a little bit of a ray. That's what it means that God comes and plays with the tzaddikim. He reveals. Also, we can say another place where it says Sena Ura'ena, that Su'u Yerechem Kodesh. Okay, that's what it means. Kodesh Baruch Hu. We said Kodesh means how God surrounds and is above the worlds, and that's the essence of the Torah, the source of the Torah. And Baruch is how God comes into the worlds. That's the ray of the Torah which can be understood in the world. Now, the understanding of the Torah, like we saw by Rabbi Bar Nachmani, is really also comes from the essence of God. And so that's why because he got to the essence of God, so he understood the reason from the essence of God. And the rabbis that were, even in the rabbis that were in the heavenly court, they couldn't get the essence of God. Okay, here we go. Listen to this. The Rambam, in the end of the laws of Mehilchot, was this Taras Tzahara, Tzorat, Tumas Tzorat, the laws of the impurity of Tzorat, he decides, the Rambam, he decides all the laws of the Torah, right? There are great people like of his level, let's say, that they have the ability to disagree with him. But the Rambam is one of the prime source of law. Well, he knows all the Gemaras, he knew all the Torah and everything, and he said that the law is like the heavenly court against God and against Rabbi Bar Nachmani. And also it says, that he says the suffix is Tomei. And he says the reason is because Rabbi Yeshua argues with this, and then the Goyim, etc. He brings the reason. But in another book, so the Rosh, I think that's the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, I think, he says that according to another opinion, he says that the law is like Rabbi Yeshua, that the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, namely because God said that it was Torah. He said the law is Torah. So how can it be? It says, well, like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir, he would be able to say impure things, he would make them pure. And he could show everybody, and nobody understood what he was talking about. It says that everybody agreed with Rabbi Meir, but they couldn't say the law like him because they couldn't understand what he was talking about. That's because he was attached to this level of chachma. And Chachma comes from this level of God's, what's called God's, the hairs of God, little streams of godliness. But the Rabbi Meir, he was above all of that. So therefore, Rabbi Meir, he was able to say on impure things that they were pure he could find. But the majority of the wise men, that they understood the Torah like the people, like the Heavenly Court understood. Like according to these hairs, what's called little beams of wisdom that shine through. Therefore, they couldn't agree with Rabbi Meir because you have to go after the majority. And the Torah was put into this world. So that's what it means, lo b'shamayim, that the Torah, after God gave it into the world, it's not in the hands of heaven. So therefore, the Heavenly Court, even though they could disagree with what God said, because they didn't understand what God said, but still, finally, in the end, they weren't in the world. The Torah is not in heavens. Once God gave it down in the world, the Torah was already drawn down from the surrounding level into an inner level in the heavens. But when it came down to the physical world, now we have a problem. Therefore, we can understand why the Rambam says that the law is like the rabbis, because Rabbah, that he was a Yachid, he was unusual. So he was in this level of Yachid, he was attached to the essence of God, and you can't decide the law according to the essence of God. You can't decide, you have to decide the law according to the majority of the rabbis in the world. That's the way God said. Nevertheless, even though that God says that this law should be, in our case, pure, and Rabbi Nachmani said it was pure, but he has to remember, he said this only right before he died, Rabbi Bar Nachmani. But nevertheless, because the Heavenly Court said that it was pure and it was impure, and they brought all sorts of reasons. So therefore, you had to go according to that majority, and also the majority of the rabbis in this physical world also would say that it's impure, agreeing with the Heavenly Court. So here we have to say that it's something like going after the majority, namely, Davka b'pluchta and the Chachma of the Mishnah Zelzeh. But here, maybe we can say, if so, how can anybody say that it's pure? Because we know what God said. God said that it was pure. So maybe we can say in this case that there's a place that we can decide that it's pure. Okay, what did we learn from this thing? What did we learn from this? Let me say one second, excuse me. What did we learn from this? We learned, first of all, that the laws of impurity and purity, even these laws, which are not in action today, and they will be when the third temple comes, even though I don't know how long they'll be when the third temple comes, maybe in the beginning, because eventually there won't be any impurity or any death. But still, they're very, very important to the essence of God. But it's also very important that they have to go according to the understanding of human beings. God gave it to the world, to the Jews. It has to be, though, God-fearing Jews. It just anybody can't come off the street and say, I'm a rabbi. So these are people that devoted their whole lives to learning Torah and to understanding the godliness of the Torah. They devoted their whole lives to it. Like the souls that were up in heaven. So it says that God said, if there's a certain case that there's a doubt, God said law is pure. But the rabbi said, but even the rabbis sitting in the heavenly court, we want a reason. The Torah was given to understand. But we have to understand the reason. We have to understand the true reason. Said God said it's pure good. We're looking through the Torah. We can't find any basis for what God said. Therefore, the heavenly court said, we have to say that if there's a doubt, it's impure. They said, let's ask a great rabbi that's in this world, Rabbi Nachmani. He's in the physical world. He can decide. So he decided the law, and he decided in favor of God. Why? Because the rabbis, the Tanaim, they had power to do miracles, even to raise the dead, to split the sea. We saw by Pinchas ben Yair, he split the sea. And it says, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, he rose the dead. We're going to see in the Sikh of the Rebbe, we're going to learn now that Rabbeinu HaKodesh said that he could have been Moshiach. He should have been Moshiach. They had the power. But nevertheless, in this physical world also, you don't go according to great geniuses, holy people, that they know what God wants. The Torah goes according to human understanding. It has to be rabbis that are God-fearing rabbis, yes. So therefore, there's a place for the Rambam to decide against God and Rabbani Bar Nachmani, and to decide according to the Heavenly Court. But there's others that they side with God and Rabbi Bar Nachmani. So we see how miraculous and incredible that the Torah is, that it's even above the spiritual. And that's the idea of the holiness of Torah and the essence of God being in the Torah and those who learn it in this world. Okay, now let us learn a sikha of the Rebbe. Here we go.